They said they were, and if they don't, they watch and been writing their stories from the video.
As tradition, we'll begin our meeting in prayer. Our God and Father in heaven, we thank you for this most beautiful day and all the blessings of it. Thank you for the health you've given us. Allow us to get up and live and enjoy another day of your creation. We thank thee for this country we live in, this community we live in, the freedoms we enjoy, the safety and protection we enjoy. Thank thee for slowing this virus down. Pray it will continue to come to an end. Pray for our servicemen and women. You continue to bless and protect them and bring them home as soon as possible. Be with us, commissioners, this day. May the decisions we make be for the betterment for all involved. Continue to watch over and care for us, guide, guard, direct us in all things. Pray in Christ's name, amen. First item on the agenda is approval of minutes of May 26th. Terry moves we approve. Steve seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve minutes. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous. Item C, financial report.
Yep. Financial report is in your packet. And I'll be glad to answer any questions about it. It's through May. We're going to have a budget discussion under new business for the final budget for fiscal year 2022. So we'll get into the financials in more detail at that point. But this is the typical 3-page finance report that you see every month. And again, I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have on that report.
Generally, how are we doing financially?
We're in good shape. The number looks a little different, but the city funding, we didn't get the check till just this month, so the city funding kind of threw us off for the fourth quarter, but it's now in the bank, and the June number will look more on par. Right now, we're estimating about $80-some thousand in carryover for next fiscal year. I'll give you the exact number. $81,636 is our estimate for the final budget that we're going to talk about later. So that's pretty much right on target, if not $10,000 higher than we anticipated at the end of the year. So again, answer any questions anyone has.
Any questions about financial? Hello. Motion to approve. Terry moves we approve financial report. Second. Jeff seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor, vote unanimous. Thank you. Construction sureties, you want to go over that, Steve?
Just real quick, that's in your packet like every month, and just point out on cash bonds, just checked this morning, the bank account for the surety account's actually $10,659.45. The Hunt Farm Section 123 sidewalk bond was already released, and the check hadn't been processed. It's been cashed now. Mr. Sharp has cashed that check. So again, that project's done. The Foxgate subdivision project is on your agenda to be released. So that is the item we need to take action on, and that's under item D on your agenda. We've got that project now done for the streetlights for Foxgate subdivision. And so that bond amount that you see on the report, we're asking you to release that amount today, which finishes up all the cash bond prior projects. So again, that's on page 1 of your agenda. It says Foxgate subdivision release cash bond amount of $10,491.88 for streetlight construction. Unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, the city helped us get that done too. This project actually came in under budget. So we're going to have a residual amount, as you can see there, $91.88, which have to go back to the developer again. So we're going to have to find this developer. This is a very old bond, and see if they're even still around and make an attempt to get that $91 back to the developer. But the $10,400 would go care of the city because they were the project manager contractor that got the street lights installed. The initial bid for the street lights was $56,000. So what the city ended up doing was putting less lights, spacing them a little further apart, and got the street lights around that last section of Fox Harbor back there. They're just longer run between street lights. So $10,400 goes to the city, $91.88 go back to the original developer if we can find them. But again, we would need a motion and approval to release that cash bond.
Jeff moves, we approve.
Second.
And is it Sally?
Yeah.
Sally seconds, I thought it was.
We ordered her name tag.
All right, good.
Didn't get it today.
Question and motions on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor, vote unanimous.
Thank
Thank you. Subdivision approvals,
Lisa's going to do those.
Lisa?
And I'll put them on the screen. And by the way, in your packet, I think we got them stapled wrong. There's 5 subdivisions. They're in your agenda, but they may be out of order on the stapled version in your packet slightly.
First, we have LMD Holdings LLC and CHDH Properties LLC have applied for an approval of a subdivision on a tract of land located at 521 Inslin Drive, Danville. The property is zoned ag. The applicant is combining 3 existing tracts to make a 5.160 acre lot A. The 25-foot field line setback needs to be shown on the plat. There's one spelling typo to be corrected. Otherwise, it's technically correct and ready for final approval.
And let me point out one thing, because there's a lot of names there. This is the distillery case that we just talked about. So this is Central Seal, back there off of Letton Drive. This is Enslin, but Letton Drive is a street you turn in off Stanford Road. Central Seal's back here, as you can see in multiple tracks, is all Central Seal. The distillery that we just approved is probably down here for the Rick House. And they are swapping property with Central Seal. So this is a tract of land that's owned by the distillery, that's zoned agriculture, that they're conveying to Central Seal, which is being added to this piece, and they're trading them the 1 acre lot that's further down the road. It'll be their new entrance as zone commercial. So this is a land swap, so they can get their driveway off of Letton Drive to come back to the distillery. Central Seal gets the back part of this farm track off that bigger farm piece. And so that, the LMD Holdings is a distillery, and the other name is Central Seal, that's back there in the back. Just wanted to point that out.
The next plat in your packet after L&D should be Cotton. Linda Cotton has applied for an approval of a subdivision of tract of land containing 31.967 acres. It's located at 5285 Perryville Road, it's zoned agriculture. 3 of the tracts, tract F, E, and D, will all front Perryville Road, and 1 tract, tract G, is gonna be landlocked and can only be conveyed to an adjoining property. No plat corrections were suggested. It's technically correct and awaits final approval. Next in your packet, we have William and Patricia Hunley again. Have applied for an approval of a subdivision on tract of land containing 48.830 acres. This is located at 0 Mill Road. The property is zoned agriculture. Suggestions on the plat are that the roadway name and the right-of-way for the road frontage be marked, which is Mill, and the correction of a typo on the tract acreage in the purpose statement for tract 12. Other than that, it's technically correct and ready for final approval.
Let me stop for real quick there. Those first 3 plats went through tech review, and you could vote on them in one motion. Plats 4 and 5 came in late, and we accepted them, and they actually need preliminary and final approval. So they really need a different motion, but you guys could vote on the first 3 if you see fit, and then we can do 4 and 5 together or individual.
Questions or discussion on the first 3 plats that have been presented? Terry moves, we approve the first 3. Second. Jeff seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor, vote unanimous. Thank you. Okay, number 4, Lisa, please.
Okay.
We'll take it separate. Okay.
has applied for an approval of a subdivision on a tract of land containing 3.022 acres located at the corner of US Highway 127. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, it's 0 US Highway 127 Danville. And that is at the corner of, what is that other road, Steve? Ingleside or Summit Drive?
Yeah, it's actually Summit, and that's Stuart Powell car lot, just to the north.
This property is zoned highway business. Suggestions were made to the plat for just minor clerical corrections. It's ready for preliminary and final approval.
Questions or discussion? Think we could have a motion to, one motion to do both, is that correct, Henry?
For both of, do you want to do?
No, for both preliminary and final, can we do that in
Yes,
one
sir.
motion? Thank you.
So moved.
Jeff moves we approve preliminary and final as presented. Rita seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous. And then number 4, Mark and Janelle Farrell.
Okay, finally, we have Mark and Janelle Farrell. They've applied for an approval of a subdivision on a tract of land containing 15.383 acres. It's located at 6210 Parable Road in Danville. Property zoned ag, and this plat is going to create tract A1 at 15.383 acres from the parent tract A of Farrell. It will leave 46.171 acres in tract A. It also establishes a 50-foot utility easement across the Highway 150 frontage of tract A1 and provides for an ingress-egress easement across tract A for the use of tract A1. With all suggestions added, the plat is technically correct and can receive preliminary and final approval today.
Make a motion for preliminary and final approval of the plat.
Jeff moves we approve. And Sally seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor, vote unanimous. Thank you. Item F, public hearing. Public hearing, Landmark Trust applied for an application to rezone property, a tract of land containing .270 acres located at 202 East Walnut Street, Danville, Kentucky. The requested zone change is from two-family residential RM2 to central business CB.
Mr. Chairman, I'll recuse myself from this hearing.
Okay. Jeff's recusing himself from this particular hearing due to being associated with what's going on with this property.
All right, I'll do this pretty quick, and got slides up on the screen. You should have a staff report in your packet, and I'll go through that. It's 202 East Walnut, which you see kind of in this general area here. That's kind of a busy aerial and kind of confused with the tree line. This is the property we're looking at, this historic structure on East Walnut. Sorry. And this is looking towards the west, and this is looking down the hill. And what we have here is a piece of property that's zoned, similar to the zone changes we saw last couple months in the downtown area. And I'll go to the zoning map real quick. It's zoned RM2. And as we zoom out and see the downtown, see all this central business, we've got multifamily, we've got highway business, got a lot of different zoning happening right here. What you really don't see is any single family, interesting enough. So that's our historically our duplex district, RM2, and the property's right here. I'm not aware it's ever been used as a duplex. It's a historic structure, and what the application is, similar to the other two that we did in the downtown area, which, as you know, we're right over here on Wilderness. Our map hasn't been corrected, and one for the city over by the hospital, that we relabel this from RM2, which is duplex, to central business, which gives the flexibility to do a single-family residence or maybe a commercial use. And what the applicants want to do, Mr. Coomer's here representing the Bull Landmark Trust, and you heard our planning commissioner's going to be involved possibly as the contractor on this, so if you have some questions on what's going to happen, again, he's sitting here now as being part of the project. They want to rehab the structure for an adaptive reuse of some kind to be in the downtown area. There are historic covenants on this property through the Bull Landmark Trust and the state, so it has to be rehabbed in a certain manner. Additionally, it has to be open to the public at different times for tours and maybe some other things. So the property owners that are looking at this, there's a real estate contract right now between the Landmark Trust and the property owners out of South Carolina, is what they would like to do is possibly stay there. They have a son that's going to maybe come to Center College, we were told, and then maybe use this as Airbnb, and then maybe some kind of minor commercial use, incidental, they're not exactly sure. They're looking into that, but it has to be open to the public. So it's not going to be a museum or anything of that nature, but it's going to be something where the public can tour through it and see the historic structure once it's brought back to that original state. So there's how it sat for a lot of years. You can see the historic marker that's here, and again, Mr. Coomer's here, can speak to that, and our contractors here that can explain what's going to have to happen. They've already met with the Danville Architectural Heritage Board about getting a certificate of appropriateness and construction techniques and what has to occur on the property. So as far as the staff report goes, it's very similar to what you've seen before on page 2. We looked at the comprehensive plan. We looked at the goals and objectives. We looked at the future land use map section on pages 4 and 5 that outline commercial uses specifically in the downtown area, interesting enough. And then we look at our future land use map, and we'll get to that, which is right here. And like a lot of times when you look at the future land use map, it's kind of hard to understand sometimes what the goal is. This is clearly the downtown Danville. You see a ton of commercial, but these individual lots right in here are still shown as low density. This is public, and this is duplex, and this is moderate, single, duplex, single, public, commercial. So there isn't a generalized pattern, but I think we all know it's downtown Danville. Central business is the predominant zoning district in the core of the downtown. As far as the future land use map goes, the applicants actually requesting that the original zoning was not the appropriate zoning. It was never a duplex. It's more appropriate to be central business, and that gives them the ability to rehab the structure with a few other uses as it going forward. So then in that case, you all are allowed to follow the future land use map if you see fit, or if you think the evidence shows that the zoning wasn't the appropriate zoning, then you're making findings of a different nature that are outlined on page 9 of the staff report that give you the ability to approve zone changes or recommend zone changes under the inappropriate zoning option. Before I finish up, I want to point out one other issue, and then we'll let the applicant speak. On page 7, the applicant did submit a really nice narrative, the applicant and the co-applicant, and then there are conditions that were imposed on the property as part of this consideration. That's on page 8. And I'll just read the conditions real quick that the applicants have put forward. Number 1 says the applicant agrees to provide no more than 50% lot coverage throughout the property. The central business zone lets you cover 100% of the property. So they're committing that a portion of this is going to stay green. The 50% of the property will never be developed with buildings, parking, sidewalks, et cetera. Central business also allows for on-street parking, which again will allow flexibility as opposed to cover up the entire lot in blacktop, for example. So number 1 says the property is going to stay 50% green and open. Number 2 commits to a building max footprint of 5,000. The reason it's 5,000 is because this is a big lot, an actual fairly good-sized lot for downtown Danville. When you go back and look at the neighboring properties and the lot sizes, we'll go back to this slide. This is a decent-sized lot, even though it's 0.270 acres compared to some smaller lots downtown. And with the applicants, I talked to them on the phone a couple times from South Carolina. What they'd like to do is get this cabin rehabbed, and down the road may build a second structure that matches that and have kind of two structures that potentially could be used for a commercial endeavor or an Airbnb. They're not sure if they're ever going to get to that point, so that's the reason the building cap is 5,000 square foot, because there could be an additional building, and then you'd have to put the combination of 50% open space, 5,000 square foot cap. They're not going to be able to do much on that property, but there is potential to maybe subdivide the lot or even create a second structure. So number two just gives them a little bit of flexibility for an additional structure into the future. Three deals with signage, pretty straightforward there. Four, I explained to them with central business, pretty broad scope of uses you can do in that district. You either got to tell us exactly what you're going to do, or you could legislate out the things you promise you'll never do. And again, they indicated an Airbnb, an overnight residence, guest house, kind of a tourist draw or something where the public can use this space either for a meeting or a tour. Those are really the primary uses. So they said they didn't really want to lock that down. They still might want to do something else, maybe a coffee shop. Who knows? Just someday, there's not much they could do, but there may be some kind of retail that comes into play some point in the future.
They don't mention anything about commercial, but they say that it's primary use and secondary use. So
Yeah.
when you talk about commercial use, it's not mentioned.
Well, but number four then legislates out the exact things that will never happen on the property.
I understand, but
The primary use in,
nowhere else does it say anything about commercial development.
well, the zoning district allows commercial development.
Allows, but aren't we supposed to be following his plan here?
Well, the narrative is just kind of giving you their general understanding of what they're wanting to do. Their primary use and secondary use, the primary use is an overnight stay when they're in town. Secondary is probably the Airbnb.
Okay.
Uh,
That's
It's,
not commercial use, is it?
oh yeah, Airbnb is, sure.
That's what they're considering commercial use?
Oh, it is commercial under our ordinance, yeah.
Not gift shop?
Gift shop would be too.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just asking, where does it limit what someone can do with property?
Well, what
In the
four,
plan.
four is what limits some uses without limiting all uses. So number four says the applicant agrees to exclude the following uses.
I understand, I'm reading it.
So they didn't want to say Airbnb, coffee shop, number three, number four, because we don't know what number five and six
So
could
it's
be.
really, when they establish a plan like this, it really doesn't limit them except where it says they're limited.
That's right. If they didn't have a number four, then everything in central business that you can think of downtown, it could be a hotel, it could be it could be Harvey's, it could be, restaurant.
Because once before I asked you that, you said that we could change that if they didn't do what they said they were doing. What they're limited to do is here.
Yeah, and we enforce that.
Okay, but what if they do something different?
We'll, yeah.
There's restrictive covenants for
Yeah.
landmark trust. No, I
Yeah,
understand.
yeah, that's additional, yeah.
I'm just worried about what we're saying.
Yeah, well, if they're committing to not allowing these uses, they can never do them. We're not really then policing the uses that they may come in and do.
Okay, that's where I'm
Yeah.
confused, because once on another situation, you'd mentioned that if they do something outside of what this
Sure,
says,
sure.
then we can take that back.
Use the distillery case. They committed to a rick house only. So the applicant makes a decision, do I go the allowable use route in the condition, or do I go the prohibited uses route? The central business is so broad, they decided to legislate out the things they know no one would ever want on that location.
Prohibited, you got
Yeah.
that spelled out.
Right.
I'm just saying, this doesn't limit them for what else they can do except what's prohibited.
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
They had that option to do the other, they chose
okay, I
this.
just need to understand, because I was confused about before when I asked that.
Yeah.
And maybe you were thinking I was talking about prohibited use.
No, at that point, the case actually spelled out allowable uses, and in that case, they were bound by that exact use. So had they put number four, the only use will be an Airbnb, then that's all they can do.
Mr. Griffin, if I might, the other limitation on this, we've talked about what's in the condition, we've talked about what's provided by the landmark trust. There's also what our use chart in the zoning ordinance does and does not allow for the central business zone. So that's going to be the other restriction on it.
Yeah, my confusion was, I misunderstood what you said in an earlier case, that they were restricted to what this said.
And that's because they took the opposite approach of restricting exactly what they would do. In that case, they did. For example,
Okay.
so let me just real quick,
Okay,
so,
I'm satisfied.
well, this case right here, when we did the one right over on Wilderness, they committed yoga studio only.
Okay, so that's what, so they can't do anything.
Nothing, that's right.
they committed to.
So what's different about this one?
They took the prohibited uses approach versus the allowable uses approach. So this is what can't
You can
happen.
either approach you want.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. You offer up the conditions. So these folks, they're both central business, so they both, everything you see in CB gets to do all this broad spectrum of uses. And you either legislate it down or legislate it out, one or the other. So that's number 4, but those uses they legislate out were auto showroom, dealer, daycare, hospital, outpatient, medical, urgent clinic, nursing home, assisted living, drive-through restaurant, all those kind of things that they don't want to do or be involved in. And we probably don't want on East Walnut. And then the last one, that any future utilities would be underground. That's kind of minor, but if you look at that street view, there are overhead utilities. You can see the service lines go to the building. This is anything that happens on the property with the second structure or garage, everything would be underground. No more overhead lines would be kind of constructed throughout that piece of property. So those are their conditions. And again, I'll finish up and turn it over to Mr. Coomers here, representing Landmark Trust, and then again, our contractor's here that knows all the specifics about the inside of this building. I've never been in it, what it is, and how it's going to get rehabbed back to its original state, whatever that was. So.
Go to the mic and introduce yourself, please, for the record.
Tell the truth.
My name is George Coomer. I live in Danville.
Go ahead and give your address, George, just for the record.
I live at 525 Cardinal Terrace.
Thank you.
My testimony, I promise to be truthful and factual to the best of my knowledge. I'm here to represent the Bull Landmark Trust as the current chair. I think Mr. Baird can probably speak more to the technical improvements that Mr. McMillan's going to make. From the Bull Landmark Trust standpoint, we see this as an opportunity to not only have the cabin sold, we're paying, $1,000 a year insurance and $40 a month electric bills that we'd like to get out of. And we don't have the funding, nor is it our mission to, rehab a building. We've owned this for probably, 40 years. I think Ms. Doolin Wallace bought this. The scaffolding's already set up to start on the repairs. I talked to Mr. McMillan last night, and he's ready to, as far as I know, he's ready to get started as soon as we can get it closed. And he told me last night that, with an approval of the zoning today, he would close earlier than he's contractually required to. But right now, the status of the cabin, it needs a new roof pretty badly. It's got some water intrusion. That's certainly not helping it. Inside, we have done some work to it. We've replaced the windows, the downstairs floor, the stairway. And that's all been done over the past probably 10 years. I think all they're planning on adding is a bathroom and a kitchen. And from a Landmark Trust standpoint, we see this as a perfect opportunity to have the property rehabbed, historically correct, and, saved. Like Mr. Hunter said, it will be open to the public. I think the covenants allow for twice a year. It would be more like a museum house than, a museum itself or something, just open to the public to see what a 1800s log cabin looked like, a glimpse of life in in that time maybe. What I understand is they're going to do everything historically correct. The log is going to be exposed, and the indoor will be as close to original as it can, but still be, modern enough to use. Our covenances are very restrictive. This used to be 2 lots. In our newest deed, we combined them, and I think we have a condition on it they can never be split back apart. So this will always stay one property. It does allow for other buildings to be placed on it. I think it calls for pretty good setback as well as I remember. The rehab has to be done to the Department of Interior standards, and we kind of copied the covenants off of the Kentucky Heritage Council. conditions. And they are going to also help us, I guess, protect the covenants. But that's really all I can address, and Mr. Baird can probably talk more to exactly what they're planning on doing.
Questions for Mr. Coomer? Go ahead, Rita. Go ahead.
What about parking? When I see a no parking sign on the street, is there no parking area there?
There's parking on the opposite side. It's kind of no parking down, going that side, although I parked there a couple times with the sign out.
Yeah, I think I have too.
Yeah, there's cars typically, but the parking's allowed on the other side.
And
And it's big enough to probably have some parking, so they have that option, but that's not their desire.
I see a driveway entrance. I don't know if that's any part of their plan, is to have off-street parking or not.
The gravel drive to the right is not part of the property.
That's correct.
Okay, I thought so, but yeah.
They could have a shared parking
Yeah,
opportunity
they
with
could.
them. They have on-street parking, and again, if they're coming in there as a single family staying in there or Airbnb, you'd imagine, because of the size of the cabin, it's gonna be one car type of situation. And then if it's open to the public, there's parking there, the park, kind of corner there.
Any other questions for Mr. Coomer?
Yes, sir. Mr. Coomer, do the covenants prohibit the demolition of the house?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay,
And it cannot be moved.
okay.
We could have sold that cabin many, many times over if it could be moved. That was everybody's, original desire. And one other thing to add is, because of what it is and where it is, it pairs very well with Constitution Square in that part of town.
Any other questions, please? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Baird, anything you'd like to add with regard to what you're gonna do?
Questions?
Any questions for Jeff with regard to renovations? Okay, hearing none. Okay, excuse me. This being a public hearing, we ask for record at least if anyone else this year would like to speak in favor of this zone change. And hearing none, we will ask for the record if there's anyone who'd like to speak in opposition to the zone change. And hearing none, then we would consider this public hearing closed, and at this time, the commission is free to act. And Henry, is there a motion on the back there as to what needs to be made with, if for approval or disapproval?
There is, and I'm ready with the motion for approval, and if there's concern about this, then we can fashion one for disapproval.
Okay. So do we have a motion? To approve. Rita moves, we approve.
Ms. Douglas, might I suggest the following addition to that motion, that the zoning is inappropriate because the house has never been a duplex, cannot be removed or replaced with one. And the proposed zoning is appropriate because it best allows for a use that both maintains the historic property as is required and permits its productive use. And we would also attach the applicant conditions to the motion.
You good with that, Rita?
I'm good with that.
Okay, thank you. Need a second? And Steve seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve? Hearing none. All in favor? Vote unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, George. Okay. Under new business, advisory committee report did not meet. Personnel committee report, personnel committee did meet, and I'll quickly try to give that. Steve presented Lisa's evaluation, and we approved Lisa's evaluation, and the committee was very complimentary on the work Lisa has done, and certainly the improvement she has made in terms of becoming much more, I guess, knowledgeable, proficient, and able to do the things that she needs to be able to do in order to keep the office running as good as it is, and we certainly appreciate that, Lisa, and thank you for the good work you've done. Then we did Steve's evaluation. He got by the skin of his teeth, but anyway, no. We only had positive comments for Steve. Thinks he's doing an excellent job. Appreciate the proactive work that he does in keeping things going, keeping us all up to speed, and certainly doing an excellent job, and it was certainly privileged to have Steve as our director. and think he's doing an excellent job as well. And they were just minor comments about little things that we might be able to do to make things even better, but those were minor, so to speak. So that's my report. If anybody on the Personnel Committee wants to add anything to that, you're more than welcome to do so. Hearing none, then we'll move on to Budget Committee report.
Yeah, the Budget Committee met, I guess it was last week, Chapter Reed and myself, to review two things, the projected year end for fiscal year 21, and then the fiscal year 22 budget, and that's what you got in your packet. And I'm gonna talk to this single page that was passed out, we're just gonna talk about major changes that exceeded $1,000, so. We're actually gonna talk to three columns in the detailed one. You got column 3, which is the projected year end for fiscal year 21, the column next to that, column 4, which is the budget, the final budget for last year, this year. And then the final column on the far right, which is the budget for next year. So 3 columns we'll be comparing on this single page. So if we go to the single page, and we're gonna start with section A. What we're gonna
Should
do
be
here
this.
is just
He
compare
passed them out.
the budget for this year to our final projected year end for this year. So if you start with the first column, revenue, you can see our budget this year was a revenue of $158,300. If you drop down to the projected year end, it's $173,395, so that's about a $15,000 increase in terms of higher revenue than budget. And then you can look down through the line items, the zone changes, the variance apps, subdivision plats, zoning permits, land use and recording fees, which we basically collect the land use and recording fees and then transfer that all over to the county. And those are the major changes, which is basically higher revenue from what we do, to account for the $15,000 increase in actual projected year end compared to budget. Then if you go to the right on expenditures, we had budgeted expenditures of $197,800. If you drop down to the projected year end, or we're projecting $193,000, 9/11, so it's about a $4,000 less spending than budget. And the things that accounted for those reduction in spending was, first of all, we spent less on retirement. I think the state reduced, after we did the budget, the state reduced how much we actually had to set aside for retirement, which is why the retirement amount was less than what we had budgeted. And then again, the land use recording fees, that's just basically the same number that you see on the left-hand column that we collect, we then transfer over to the county. And then finally, the GIS mapping and other services, this is the money we pay to maintain our online zoning map. And we had to put some money in there to make some changes, and we wound up not using that money. So that's basically the $4,000. Those pluses and minuses that account for the $4,000 less spending than we had in our plan. Then go to section B, and this is where we're going to compare how we project to end this year to next year's final budget. You know, we approved a few months ago the preliminary budget to be submitted for 2022. This is what we propose to submit. And so again, as we spoke a few moments ago, the projected year end for this year in terms of revenue is $173,395. And if you drop down to the final budget, next year we're proposing to budget $190,300 for a final budget. That's about a $16,000 increase in revenue. And then if you go down through those line items, the 2 biggest increases are from the Danville contribution and the Boyle County contribution. Between the 2 of them, that's $30,000 more in next year's budget than we got in this year. Basically, it returns those 2 to their pre-COVID contribution amounts. They reduced them during COVID, and now they're bringing them back up where they were prior to COVID. And so that's a $30,000 increase in our revenue there. Now for our other typical revenue sources, zone changes, variance apps, subdivision plats, zoning permits, land use recording fees, we're budgeting less than what we took in this year, being a little conservative. And so that really accounts for all the negatives you see there, which is basically budgeting an expectation of some lower revenue than we had this year. So that gets us down to the $190,000 that we're proposing to submit as a final budget for revenue. Then then if you go over to the right-hand column under expenditures, this year, we're expecting to spend $193,911. If you drop down under the final budget, next year, we're proposing to budget $210,000, 106, which is about a $16,000 increase in expenditures. So we had about a $16,000 budget increase in revenue and about a $16,000 budget increase in expenditures. And the big item there is salaries and wages. This is Steve and Lisa's salaries and wages, up to $4,770 between the two of them. Some of you remember that we voted to give Steve an above-average increase to try to get him closer to the midpoint of the salary range for someone in his responsibility for a similar size county. Then we put some money in, $2,400 for a seasonal intern. We didn't have one this year. I think we had one 2 years ago. And so we did put some money back in now that we're post-COVID to hire a summer intern, to give some summer vacation coverage for Lisa and Steve when they take their much-needed vacation. Retirement, the amount we have to set aside for retirement is up this year by about $4,000, or next year, budgeting compared to this year. And then the land use and recording fees, that's just a transfer to the county. And then we are expecting this year to update the future land use map, the FLUME. And so if we do that, we will be spending money with the GIS mapping data services folks to update our online map. And so we've got $3,500 in the budget for next year to handle that. And then there's just a bunch of pluses and minuses of a few $100s that account for the $4,844 difference to get the budget amount on expenditures of $210,000. So again, final budget proposing a revenue of $190,300 and expenditures of $210,106. Any questions before we go on to talk about the bottom part of this page? Okay, the bottom is just basically our checkbook. And if you look at the very first column that says 2021 budget, when we put our budget together last year, we thought we would start the year with about $103,000 in the bank. We'd have $158,000 in revenue. We'd spend $197,000, and we end up with about $63,630 in the bank when it was all said and done. If you go to the next column over, that's what we now are really expecting to happen this year. When we went through our final audit, it adjusted our beginning balance down a little, so we actually started the year at $102,352. And again, we had the revenue of $173,000, expenditures of $193,000. And so we actually ended up this year, money in the bank of about right around $82,000, $81,836. So about an $18,000 increase over what we thought we would have when we put the budget together. And then if you go to the final column over there, this is what our final budget would reflect, and that is we would start 2022 with $81,836,000 in the bank. We'd have revenue of $190,000, expenditures of about $210,000, and we'd end up with about $62,000 in the bank. And if you drop down, which technically 10% is an operating reserve that we're encouraged to carry in case our expenditures are more or our revenue is less. So about $19,000 of that $62,000 we would set aside as an operating reserve. And since basically we're paying out all of our construction reserves, we've got really $0 now to carry for construction reserves. So we put all the rest of the money in what we're calling a legal reserve of $43,000. So that kind of summarizes where we are. Any questions or comments?
Comments. Excellent job, Terry. And the budget committee as well. Any questions, comments for Terry on any of this? Anything else, Terry, you need to go over?
Do we need to cover the legal agreements?
Budget needs an approval when we jump into this.
Right. Okay. Need a motion?
So moved.
Jeff moves to approve. Ann seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor, vote unanimous. Thank you. Okay.
So there's three agreements. One of them didn't get in time. We, as you guys know, a few years back went out and did an audit RFP proposal, and we have an attorney, and we just wanted to make sure we have something official on the books for legal. And then we now filled out our accounting, and we have an accounting agreement. So we went back to all the firms, and Bluegrass Ad, we have a standing contract for GIS mapping. The audit contract times out this year, so we'll talk with them after July. This is the last year in our current audit contract. But we asked our legal counsel if they'd consider just looking at the contract again and submit us a proposal, and that is in your packet. And Henry and Bruce did that, and the flat monthly fee is staying the same, the $15.50 a month that the retainer that does, 90% of the work gets done falls under that. There was a small revision under litigation, so if we get into court and we get into litigation, we had a separate hourly rate for that. That was the only change in the contract. The Budget Committee thought this was very positive. Again, our day-to-day rate and our budget number that falls out of the 18,600 basically staying exactly the same. So we just wanted to bring that to you, and if you guys see fit and want to keep everything the same on the legal services side, we'd ask that you'd approve that agreement.
Questions? Motion? Jim moves we approve.
Second.
Jeff seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve the legal agreement. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous. Thank you.
Second one is McDaniel Wealth Management that do our accounting. And we entered into that contract in the fall of 18 after we had a staff member leave, and we decided to take the finances from in-house and move them out. That saved the Planning Commission quite a bit of money. We went from 3-staff office to a 2-staff person office. And basically, the contract we've been out on since then was $395 a month. That does payroll, accounting, checks, just everything financial that moves between us and them. Working with our auditor when that happens. And again, it's been the same amount since November of 18. And in this contract, it's moved up slightly, $30 to $425 a month. So the Budget Committee reviewed this contract also and is recommending to the commission that we stay with the same firm at the revised rate for fiscal year '22.
Questions? Motion? Sally moves we approve.
Second.
Jeff seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous.
The third one didn't show up. They were supposed to have it to me by now, and the Bluegrass had the $3,500. We've already talked about the amount, but there is an agreement every year with the ad, and they said I'd have it for the packet. We didn't get it, and I said, well, if we get it for the meeting, that would be helpful, but we didn't get it either. So we'll just punt that one for right now and talk about that next month or the following month whenever we finally get their service agreement. It is our desire to continue that process with the Bluegrass ad for our online mapping, and it would be $3,500. So we'll just move past that one, and that's all I have, and that's what the Budget Committee did this month.
Okay. Again, I want to compliment the Budget Committee on the good work, Terry. Y'all have done a great job. Nothing else on the agenda. Before we are adjourned, I got a few things I want to say. I may regret this, but I'm going to regret it more if I don't. So here we go. As all of y'all probably know, this is my last P&Z meeting, and that's not by choice. I've been on P&Z for 16 years, and in the 16 years, P&Z has been completely non-political body, and it needs to remain that way, and I'm not so sure that that's going to continue to happen from what I understand. This thing may sound like sour grapes, and maybe it is, but not maybe for the reasons you might think. So I'd like to explain what's transpired so that there's a clear understanding of how this came to be. I received a call on a Tuesday informing me that I had not been reappointed to P&Z. I was somewhat surprised, but not totally. I waited until that Friday, but never got notified, and I was expecting to get some sort of an official notification. Never occurred. So that Friday, I went to Hired Hunt to verify that I had not been reappointed and to find out why. I met with Mr. Hunt, and I asked him why I wasn't reappointed. He said something to the effect that I'd been on P&Z long enough, they needed new face, and that we, whoever we is, had met with this person, and he had some good ideas, and we wanted to go in a new direction. And I'm going to refer back to that later. So I asked why I wasn't notified, and he said he didn't know. I asked who was supposed to notify me. He said he didn't know. So I asked, am I not worthy to serve anymore, just to be blunt? He said, no, that wasn't the case. Then I asked, was I not appointed because I'm a Democrat? He said he didn't know what anybody's political affiliation was, and I find that hard to believe because Susie Kelly was a Democrat. She said she wouldn't get reappointed, and she didn't. And I asked, was Susie not reappointed because she was a Democrat? And he said, no. And I said, I'm a Democrat. Is that why I'm not getting reappointed? He said, no, that was not the case. So you make of that what you want, read between the lines if you want, but I think that is the case. I didn't get reappointed because I am a Democrat, at least registered one. I asked if he felt like a California transplant could better serve Boyle County citizens, community than I, a native who's lived here for 65 years at least. And he said, well, again, he had some new ideas and he liked what he said. So I find it interesting that he or they knew how to find a new person, but didn't know how to notify the person that was not going to be reappointed. So I'm not so bothered by not being reappointed. I mean, I've been on it 16 years, and my wife and I have talked about it's probably close to time for me to go, but I wanted to go out on my terms, not on somebody else's. So what has really bothered me and stuck in my craw, so to speak, and if you're from a farm, you know what that means, is that no one in the courthouse, specifically Hired Hunt, did not have the courage, backbone, wherewithal, common courtesy, professional integrity, personal integrity, to come to me prior to and simply say, Jerry, we're not going to reappoint you, appreciate your service or whatever. And that just seemed to be totally unprofessional, and I was just appalled by it, and I said that to him. So 2 days after I met with Mr. Hunt, I received a letter in the mail informing me that I was not reappointed. The ironic thing about that was the letter was postmarked 2 days before I met with him, and the letter had his signature on it, and I assume he wrote it and signed it. So it really confused me that he didn't know who was to notify me, yet he sent a letter with his signature on it saying that I was not reappointed. And that was postmarked 2 days before I ever met with him, and he told me that. So, you know, go figure that. So my issue is, if there is one, it's the total lack of professionalism, lack of respect shown to me in the way this whole thing was handled. Surely our judge executive can do better than this. I tell you how it hit me and how it made me feel. Just a few weeks ago, COVID masks were really important, and everybody used them and were really valuable. And now you can find them laying in the Walmart parking lot. They're no use at all. And that's kind of where the way it hit me. 2 weeks ago, I felt pretty important to P&Z in this community, and now I'm like that COVID mask laying in the Walmart parking lot. But anyway, now I got that off my chest, I want to address some of the things that's been accomplished with P&Z, at least while I've been part of it. And I'll just run through these pretty quick. We have sent out requests for proposals for audit services, legal services, bank consolidation, and so forth. We revised and adopted the Planning and Zoning Commission bylaws. We revised and adopted the Board of Adjustment bylaws. We revised our monthly financial report. We revised our job description for employees. We've reviewed downtown historic design guidelines. We've reviewed personnel policies and drafted new employee benefits manual and updated those. We revised all the Planning Commission application forms. We revised the joint interlogical agreements. We've revised the fee schedule for Planning Commission for Phase 1, Phase 2, and Phase 3. We've created a new Planning Commission website. We've developed the Phase 2 GIS online map for Boyle County and the PVA and the Bluegrass Ad. We rewrote the Danville-Perryville Boyle County zoning ordinances. We've updated the comprehensive plan. We revised the subdivision regulations. We developed and revised the Perryville zoning map and the request for, I've already mentioned it about legal services. accounting services. We revised the comprehensive plan and goals and objectives, and we developed the Junction City Flume. We brought Junction City back into planning and zoning. We revised the Danville, Boyle County, Perryville zoning ordinances. We developed the Junction City zoning ordinances and zoning map. And we conducted the Smart Growth Planning Conference back in November of 2019, attended by, I don't know, maybe a couple hundred people and so forth. We've moved the county building inspector, where you get your permits and so forth from, into the P&Z office, which makes it much more convenient, I think, and customer-friendly to do business with P&Z. When the recession hit in 2007, 2008, P&Z began to struggle financially because of the building almost stopped here in Boyle County. And at that time, the P&Z commissioners received $20 per meeting for each meeting. And that cost was approximately $200 per meeting to the budget of P&Z. So we decided to discontinue those reimbursements, and that has continued until this day. And over time, Steve and I calculated that's saved P&Z about $35,000. P&Z hours were cut during the recession anywhere from 20 to 50%, and we figured that has saved us somewhere between $200,000 and $300,000 during those years. Reduced the office staff from 3 to 2, and that saved us approximately $150,000. And we've discontinued the vehicle fund, saving approximately $25,000. And there's some other smaller changes we've made, like copier leasing and so forth, to make the P&Z even more financially efficient. So this totals approximately $460,000 we've saved to the taxpayers of Danville and Boyle County by just simply implementing those changes. P&Z office and operation is, in my opinion, best organized, most customer-friendly, most financially efficient since it's ever been from the day it was formed. And I think we have one of the best P&Z directors in the state, and I think we have one of the best customer-friendly P&Z administrative assistants in the state, and I am proud to be associated with them. Please understand, I'm not taking credit for all of this, hardly any of it for that fact, but credit is due to all the hard work and perseverance of the staff and all the commissioners that I've been fortunate to serve with. Every commissioner has come in, to my knowledge, without an agenda, not looking for notoriety, not looking for credit, and completely non-political, to simply work for the betterment of the community. And I hope that continues. Tongue in cheek. So I think it's obviously apparent with this kind of unorganization, poor financial management, highly questionable progress, backdoor shenanigans, unfriendly customer service, poor community relations, and with such strong political influence, you can easily see why we need these new ideas and this new face for P&Z. When performance versus politics, politics always wins. Performance always comes in second. I've tried to treat everyone fair and give everyone the opportunity to share their views, to speak their piece, even though at times it's been a little bit trying in a meeting or two, but we've gotten through. And make sure P&Z decisions are made according to Kentucky Revised Statutes and P&Z ordinances. Anything less is a disservice to anyone coming before P&Z. People have asked me many times, why do you want to be on planning and zoning? Why do you want to fool with all that stuff? And it's a simple answer. Planning and zoning provides and has provided me an opportunity to give back to this great community, and I take pride in doing so. I have two recommendations for P&Z commissioners as I leave. Number one, keep it non-political. Don't let the city and the county take over. Keep it totally independent. And number two, let Steve do his job. Do not try to micromanage. He knows his job and knows what to do probably better than all of us put together. So please do not micromanage Steve. Let him do his job. Two things I've operated by, and they're pretty simple stuff. Number one, plain words make for a good understanding. Number two, treat everyone like you want to be treated. Hopefully this has occurred during my service, and I'd like to thank everyone for the privilege given to me to serve the people of our community, and hopefully in some small way we are better for it. Thank you all very much. Any good for the order? Other.
There's still a little bit here.
Not so. Out of order, Jeff.
I'm gonna get a little emotional this, but Jerry, I admire your integrity, your honesty. Working with you for 13 of the 16 years you've been on planning zoning, you've been shown nothing but respect for all who've come before us. And for
Me
each one
emotional.
of us. And certainly have set a example for all of us to follow. And personally, I have the utmost respect for your honesty and integrity. And just for our token of our appreciation for your dedication and service to the Planning and Zoning Commission and Boyle County, we wanted to give you this small token of our appreciation. Presented to Jerry Lieber in honor of your many years of exemplary service to the Danville-Boyle County Planning and Zoning Commission, having graciously served since June 2005, including over 10 years of service as Commission Chair.
Thank you, sir. You got me emotional now. Any other good for the order? Hearing none, a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Jeff moves, and seconds. We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.